in the field of type design and this particular sort of section of typography, I have myself noticed that there's a remarkable number of very kind and helpful people. When I was just starting out, when I was, about to be a student, I wrote Robert Bringhurst and Chuck Bigelow and asked them a whole bunch of questions about how one got into type design as a career and how you could start out at doing this. And the amazing thing is that both of these very famous people who had no reason to pay any attention to me, they both wrote back to me, and one of them wrote back to me repeatedly over and over for some time, and were extremely helpful. And I've noticed that one of the things I love about this field, and I do love fonts and type design, but one of the things I love about the field is the people and how generous and kind many of the most accomplished people in this field are. And one of the things I wanted to say to a lot of the younger people or people who are just getting into this in the audience is don't be scared of approaching famous people. Just because someone has a big name doesn't mean that they won't be interested in talking to you. Just come up and say hi and ask them questions if there's something you want to know or you're curious about. Because I think you may be pleasantly surprised at how approachable and generous people are with their time. And with that said, Ravi asked me to do just a very brief showing of a couple of things. At FontLab, of course, we make type design tools as well, and we are working on something new, FontLab 6. I'm just going to show a couple of things. One thing that's been really nice is that, for a long time, FontLab essentially had no competition, and that made for a very boring world. And we are actually happy to have other people doing exciting things too. And it's become a really fun time. And we too are looking at trying to bring fun and ease of use back into type design. One of the things, one of these sort of tiny things that occurred to us is that we were tired of not having a separate measuring tool. Computers are fast. Computers can figure out what you want to measure and measure it for you all the time. So anytime, if you set your preferences correctly, anytime you move the pointer close to a stem, it will measure it, because why should you have to tell it that you need to measure? Similarly, we are now doing some interesting things with corners. And one of the problems with doing rounded corners is that it becomes harder to edit your shapes. And so, similarly to some advanced drawing tools, we're doing smart corners, which is to say, you can still edit everything as if it was a corner, but you can round it or introduce ink traps or whatever you like. And of course, you can edit these together, as you can see here. One moment. Now let's drag that and make them less rounded, right? And similarly, the next couple of things, oops, I actually want to do this one first. Similarly, now this, by the way, is all done just with opening a font. It's a normal font. It's not a parametric font or a multiple master. Just opened up a font and started editing it. And when you move things, we can intelligently scale for you. You can override that if you want. You might not want it to do that, but that is something we can just do as a default behavior. It makes it very easy to do some very fancy editing and scaling. And similarly, one problem with some of the output font formats that we have is when you bring them back in to a font editor, you've lost a lot of information that you might have found useful in the editing environment. And one of those pieces of information that you've generally lost is the idea of components, that you could have separate, have a letter and the accent and have them both be reusable pieces. And one of the things that we thought would be handy, this isn't really decomposing, it's sort of componentizing is what I would call it. So it can scan the whole font, find the repeated shapes, and just make them behave as repeated shapes. So you edit that shape in one place, and everywhere else that exists, it will just fix it and make it the same. You don't need to even have in the font separate glyphs for this to work, which is, so there's no need for some redundant separate glyph somewhere that makes that happen. It just does it. So those are some of the kinds of things we're working on. And I'm sure that my esteemed competitor will be happy to show you some of the kinds of things they've been doing. And just because we were feeling generous this week, we did a unique flyer that was being handed out this morning to people coming down the stairs. So I hope you all got one if you were interested. If you didn't, come see me, give me your card, and just write flyer on it, and I'll know what to do with it. What those flyers have is a discount code good for 50% off on either FontLab Studio or Fontographer, including upgrades or any of the variants there. So those are unique discount codes. There's a different code on every flyer. Each one is good once. So I hope you enjoy that. Thanks.